Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor at USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Yeah, good. I'm so delighted that you are, and I am as well. Dr. Shealy, I did something very risky last week, and that is I wasn't happy with one of the commercials that was airing on USA Prepares. So I sent the CEO a letter, an email, and there were two words that were used in this particular commercial, and it wasn't his words. He was repeating what someone who endorsed his product had to say. But the guy that endorsed his product used language that was not commensurate with a good quality image as I see it. And so I sent the CEO an email, and I said, and these two words are used, and I quoted them in just a 3-sentence email. And do you think that those words enhance your product's image? Thank you, Vincent Finelli. Well, within 30 minutes, I got a response. I was copied on it, and the email went to upper management at Genesis Communications Network, the network we broadcast on, and they said, please take that commercial out of rotation. And so I'm delighted that they did, because it really was, in my opinion, negative. So this morning when I connected with Jason, and Jason, thank you for engineering the broadcast, I asked him if there was any fallout from, what I did, because as you know, it's the kiss of death, commenting on commercials. Unless you say, oh yes, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, that would be, probably oatmeal bread. But when you comment on commercials, it's really risky because you can get thrown off the air. Now, have you ever commented on a commercial and had some fallout?
Of course.
And so the radio station, let me get it, before you tell us what it is, the radio station had to make a decision, a business decision. Who is more important, or what is more important, Dr. Shealy or this advertiser? Is that what they did?
Well, interestingly, there was once an advertisement immediately before my program, which was not supposed to happen, for Mercy Hospital, and I called it Mercy Less, and they withdrew thousands of dollars of advertising on the radio station.
So they were listening to their own commercial, yes?
Apparently.
Yeah. So you never know who's listening. Well, so what was the ultimate result of that? Did they take you to the front office? I never heard
anything about it. That was the end of it.
Oh, okay. Well, at that same radio station you're talking about, they called me into the front office, and they were really polite, with me. And they told me that I should be talking about who's got the best hamburgers in Springfield, Missouri. And that would be really good radio. I told them I wasn't interested. And I used to give out when I was on that radio station, for like 7 months, I think, I gave out the telephone number for Greg Burris, who was the city manager at the time, and he was responsible ultimately for putting fluoride in the water. And so I'd give out his number. I say, call Greg Burris, tell him what you think. He's poisoned your mother, your father, your sisters, your brothers, and your children, and your friends, and your family, with fluoride. Give him a call and tell him he's fired. And so people did. And I got a visit from the owner of the radio station. He met me in the hallway, and he told me that it seems that we are tying up the telephone lines in City Hall, and they're getting a lot of complaints about fluoride. And but I did it for 7 months. And then I printed up bumper stickers with Greg Burris and fire Greg Burris with his phone number. And although it was a lot of fun for me, And although I thought we could actually get fluoride out of the water, because I know you're a big advocate of getting fluoride out of the water. It can't be done, Dr. Shealy. I mean, unless you are the mayor and unless you have a medical degree and a interest in finance, and you can find some reason that you can't afford to put fluoride in the water, you can't get it out. Have you seen the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. It's the greatest. It's the greatest scam before COVID-19.
Yeah. So that was my experience, and it's interesting that you had a similar experience. I got called to the front office another time, and they asked me why will I not allow this one particular advertiser to be on USA Prepares? And it wasn't that I was getting paid for it. The radio station was getting paid for it. But I was in this guy's store, and he just bought something off a little old lady, a widow. And she came in and she said, I have no idea what this is, but, I need to sell it. Will you buy it? And so he told her it really wasn't worth very much, and he gave her very little money for it. And then as soon as he paid her, she left. He got on the phone and he called his buddy and he said, you won't believe what I just did. I ripped off this little old lady, and here's what I got, and here's what I gave her, and it's worth, like 10 times more. And he was really proud of it, but he wanted to advertise at the radio station when I was broadcasting. I wouldn't allow it. I absolutely wouldn't allow it because I thought he was dishonest. So, but the radio station kept pressuring me, why don't you let this guy advertise? And I said, absolutely not. So after about 5, they snuck those commercials in for this guy. And after about 5 of them, I said, that's it. Let me tell you what I think about this guy. And so I did. And boy, did I get beat up for that. So anyway, that's a little bit of backstory radio. Dr. Shealy, what's new in your world?
Well, the same as everybody else. There's no truth that I can be sure about coming out of anywhere.
Yeah,
it's that simple. Everything is controversial.
Yep.
And the campaign to ruin the country continues full steam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a story about, let's see, I'm trying to get to it right now. It's about religious freedom. And the state of Connecticut on the East Coast in the United States has decided that they are going to end religious exemptions for the vaccine, for students. So the Connecticut governor signed into law last Wednesday a bill that ends religious exemptions for mandatory school vaccinations in the state. Now, medical exemptions remain in effect. But if a person says, no, we're not going to take the immunizations, my child's not going to have them, he's a minor and he's under our care and we're his parents, and he's not going to get them because we have a religious reason. We don't want these foreign bodies injected into our child. That used to work. Well, now in Connecticut, it will not work because it's now law that there's no religious exemptions from mandatory school vaccinations. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dr. Shealy?
Well, I can't tell you what I really think of the radio.
Well, we can imagine. We can imagine.
I consider it fascism at its worst. Mm-hmm. That's part of what I think of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, if it's all right with you, I'll share a story about one of our children who decided after being homeschooled all his life, he wanted to try high school at the public training camp here in Missouri. And so the school said, does he have, before enrolling him or during the enrolling process, has he had all his vaccinations? And I said, oh, sure, he's had vaccinations. And I worded that very carefully. And he had some. And they said, well, has he had all of them? And I said, well, he's got all the vaccinations that he needs. Well, eventually they said to me, they called me in and Mrs. Finelli into the nurse's office, and they said, we want proof. And I said, I can't give you proof. I don't have proof. And they said, well, then he needs to have his vaccinations. And I said, no. Tell you what, we have a religious reason why he will not get his vaccinations. And they dropped it right there. They said, sign this. And it was just a real simple piece of paper that's with some verbiage on it that said, for religious reasons, we claim the exemption. And that was it. Now, until you say
in this state today.
Yeah, right. Well, that was, many, many years ago.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah, it's like 15 years ago. So, and it worked. I mean, it was like instantaneous. It was like turning on a light switch that this, we were at loggerheads, with the school system about this until I mentioned religious exemption. And then it was, oh, okay, we'll do that. But they weren't going to tell me. Nobody said, if you just sign this, this whole thing goes away. They didn't offer that. They were going to pressure us into having our child vaccinated. So, Dr. Shealy, when you and I were younger, we got vaccinations. Sometimes we even got them at school. We got lined up for an assembly line for the Salk vaccine, right?
Right.
And it was like boom, 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 boom. Everybody got it. And one of them we got was like a red liquid, a dot of a red liquid on a sugar cube. I don't remember what that was for, but I did get it. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So now it's not just 3 vaccinations. It's like close to 100, isn't it?
I don't really know. I've lost count of it, but I know it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, class, what I've been trying to explain with Dr. Shealy's help is that in Connecticut, the religious vaccine exemption is over for now. Now, unless that gets overturned, it's in play. So you cannot use the religious exemption. Then what happens is, once one state does it, the other states look at that as precedent. And they say, well, obviously it's good because Connecticut did it. And so then the other states will follow suit. And pretty soon it'll be all 50. And if Washington, D.C. becomes a state, it'll be 51. But the point is, the separation between church and state has been eroded in the corrupt state of Connecticut. And so what does that mean? Well, I looked it up. And it's paraphrased from Thomas Jefferson. Now, this comes from Wikipedia and is used by others in expressing an understanding of the intent and function of the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which reads, quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, end quote. So what they were saying is that the state can't tell you what to do regarding religion. So that by natural extension, if you have a concern, a religious belief, and it can be your own religion, it can be the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, which I did happen to I witnessed those guys. They were in Springfield. There really is a Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, and their mascot or their icon is some guy with a spaghetti colander on his head. And I'm not kidding. But, if they believe that vaccines are dangerous,
we're trying to quit
so be
drinking.
It. Now we're talking about religious freedom here. And Dr. Shealy, I'm not kidding. There really is a Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And they have and one of the principals involved in this church was literally arrested and put into prison because in Russia, because the government didn't like him. But there's a guy who has this card. His name is Mark Rayhofer, and on the front of this, it's like a credit card. It says the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And on the back it says, let it be known that the cardholder is an organized minister of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster and is entrusted to exercise the duties of the ministry, including sermonizing, presiding over holy ceremonies, such as marriages, baptisms, and giving last rites, and casting out false prophets. So these guys actually do have a, credit card looking identification card, with the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Now, I think I certainly don't follow their belief, but what they're saying is that if y'all can believe in whatever you believe in, we can believe in the Flying Spaghetti Monster. That's what they're saying. And, I guess from that perspective, I don't have a problem with them believing whatever they want to believe. But they're saying that we don't believe what you guys believe, and you guys are so ridiculous that we hail the Flying Spaghetti Monster. That's I guess the main concept with these guys. But in terms of religious exemptions, I applaud people who use the religious exemption to protect themselves, if they want to, from being vaccinated or their children.
Well, I hope it works, but I think our freedom is so compromised today, who knows?
Right. And we are losing freedoms every second. And it's very disconcerting to me. Dr. Shealy, I have signed up. I called your office last week. I got my truck running enough so that I think it'll get me to Springfield and back.
I hope it'll get you home, too.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm so frustrated with these Chinese parts. So we this is a stick shift car, and I bought it months ago, trying to get it so that it would run. It's a 5-speed Chevy pickup truck. And it has a little V6 engine in it. It has a 5-speed manual transmission with a clutch. Getting the clutch to work was nearly impossible because the Chinese parts don't fit with the original equipment parts. So we had to replace the entire clutch system. It would be actually the clutch pedal, the clutch master cylinder, hydraulic cylinder, the clutch lines. There are 2 of them that contain the hydraulic fluid, the clutch release bearing cylinder, the clutch release bearing, the clutch pressure plate, the clutch throwout bearing, and the pilot bearing. So all that was replaced, and it took 4 times to get this. The transmission had to come out 4 times to get to the point where it would work. Long enough for us to know that the transmission I had rebuilt with Chinese parts has failed in 500 miles. So the transmission has to come out again. So we're going to take it to Springfield, and when I see you, I'll be doing the past life regression, and our son's going to take it over to the transmission shop. Normally we would rebuild the transmission ourselves, but it costs less to have a guy that does it all the time because they get the parts less expensively than we do. So we're going to bring it to him, and they're going to put it up on the lift, and we're going to say, listen to this. Listen to 5th gear, it whines. Listen to 4th gear, it whines. Listen to reverse, it whines. And listen to what happens when you take it out of gear, and it goes clunk, 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 clunk. So obviously the transmission has failed within 500 miles. And that's Chinese parts. I'm sick of these defective Chinese parts. But anyway,
my personal
I assume it'll make it.
Is nothing. Not one single item should be made in China except fireworks that we allow into this country.
Yeah. I'm with you. It is, and if you look at all kinds of things, batteries, dry cells for your flashlight, the flashlight itself, the tape measures, the pocket knives, mugs, for drinking coffee, vitamins, minerals, supplements, the jars. I mean, everything you can possibly think of, thermometers, pens, come from China. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't think we make anything.
We should manufacture everything from toothpicks on in this country.
And we can. I mean, we have great natural resources. And if we don't have them, tough. We don't do that. We don't, if we can't make it here with our own resources, with our own labor and our own skills and our own machines and our own engineering, and our own distribution system, if we can't do that, then we don't do it. Okay? And the laws of supply and demand will fix that. So if we don't do it, we will do it. Because that's what happens with supply and demand and creativity. We'll be right back with Dr. Shealy. Dr. Shealy, I don't know if you had a chance to hear the commercials and the news during the bottom of the hour, but there are a bunch of companies that are joining on the bandwagon to offer free things for those who get a COVID-19 vaccine. So if you have a COVID-19 vaccine card, you can go to White Castle, and through the end of this month, your White Castle drive-through or dining room, and dining room is a real stretch of the imagination if you've ever been to one. You flash your vaccine card and you get a free dessert on a stick. Sam Adams or Budweiser will give you a free beer. Staples is really ramped up. They will laminate your vaccine-proof card for free. And so will Office Depot and Office Max. So
it means there's a place that will avoid like the plague.
Right.
They go on my no shop list.
Right. Well, I just added Nathan's hot dogs they'll give you a free hot dog. So they'll give you and what do our children, our boys call hot dogs? They call them butts and lips. That's what they are. That's what goes into hot dogs. I mean, pretty much everything you don't want to know about. But White Castle, Dr. Shealy, they make these little tiny hamburgers, and that's what they call them. They call them sliders. They call them sliders. Everybody else I know calls them belly bombers. Belly bombers. And the reason they call them belly bombers is that's what it feels like after you've had one. It's like, my stomach feels terrible. What did I just do? Seriously, have you heard the term belly bombers, Dr. Shealy?
I have not, but I've never been to White Castle and never will. I don't go to any fast food restaurant, actually.
I agree with you. Actually, any restaurant for me. But so I went to the internet to find out how to make the Olive Garden has what I consider the best salad dressing on the planet in terms of taste. And they use pepperoncini and they use black olives and there's some vinegar in their salad dressing. So I looked up, how to make my own because I'm not going to the Olive Garden anymore. My mom used to love it. It was a real treat for her. But anyway, the government and corporations are doing whatever they can to entice you to get this darn vaccine. Any comments about, they're using the carrot and the stick, these, hey, get a free donut at Krispy Kreme.
I'd like to hit them back with the stick firstly.
Yeah. I'm not getting it because Dr. Shealy, am I confused or once you get that injected in your system, it's not coming out, right?
Exactly. And it's beginning to sound as if they can infect other people. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that because I don't get this. I really do not understand. People are getting the vaccine and then they find out that they can get the coronavirus again. So the vaccine doesn't prevent you from getting it. The vaccine doesn't prevent you from giving it. Scam supreme. It is the worst fraud in the history of the world. It's worse than Nazi Germany at the beginning. That's just my base opinion.
Well, it's huge. I mean, in Nazi Germany in the beginning was just in Germany. This thing is global.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Insanity.
You're talking 1933 or so. The ramp up to the Nazis. And by the way, that was unbelievable. There was a bunch of masterminds that built that regime. I mean, they got the whole country to march in line, let's, for the Fuhrer, if I got to die for him, that's great. No problem there. I mean, what a bunch of, I better not say it. So the past life regression study that you are doing, I've signed up and I'll be there this week, for mine. I had talked with, one of the young ladies that sets up those appointments. And so I'll be there this week, Dr. Shealy, for the one that you and I are going to do. Do you still need others to join in with us?
Yes, indeed. I still need subjects.
Okay, subjects. And so can you, Dr. Shealy, can you explain what this is like? I mean, you're not going to be hooking me up to 240 volts or 10,000 volts.
No, you're not hooked up to any electrical gadget. I just guide you into a deep relaxation, and you do the rest.
Mm-hmm. Class, I've done this before, and I was only kidding about the 240 volts or 10,000 volts. Whatever your mental image of this is, you'll just relax in a comfortable chair. I was in a lazy boy type before, first time I did this, and I went into a deep I'd close my eyes, and Dr. Shealy just guided me through the process. He just talks to us, and one at a time, just you and Dr. Shealy, and the two of us will be there when it's my turn, and Dr. Shealy will guide me through he'll prompt some questions, and I'll respond to them. Just with my eyes closed, I'll just respond to what he has to say. That's it. That's it. There's no injection, nothing you have to swallow, nothing you have to taste, no electrodes, nothing. And it's just, it's like watching TV without the TV. It's, in a lazy boy. That's what it's like. It really is. And I think if you have that opportunity, and you do, that, it would behoove you to do this. And Dr. Shealy, I have a feeling that some people think that there's a religious reason not to do this. Like this would violate, their preacher would be furious with them, or their priest, or their rabbi, or whomever would be furious.
That means that their minister's stupid.
Yeah.
And I will tell that to the minister as well. Because from the beginning of Christianity, it was part of Christianity until 325. When Constantine, the evil emperor, didn't want people to think they had a second chance, and he demanded they take it out of the Bible. It was in the Bible until 325.
Please explain what you mean by a second chance, Dr. Shealy, so everybody understands.
By what?
Please explain what you mean by a second chance, so everybody understands what you mean.
He didn't want people to think that they could somehow have a second chance to live and recover. Theoretically, part of reincarnation philosophy is if you don't get it right in this life, you come back and do it the next time. Mm-hmm. Constantine didn't want people to think they had another chance. They had to get it right by his standard in this life. Mm-hmm. And he even didn't convert to Christianity until his deathbed, so he could continue raping, murdering, prosecuting, and converted to Christianity only on his deathbed. And to me, that is fakery.
Yeah. And what about Rodrigo Borgias? Didn't he sell indulgences?
Oh yes.
So if you wanted to get to heaven and you didn't think your behavior was conducive to that, you just go to him and just give him some money.
Ransom money, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. He'd hold you hostage, and he'd get you a COVID-19 pass to get into heaven. They would sell you one. Unbelievable. And how people have manipulated the little people from the very, very beginning. Dr. Shealy, so if someone wants to join you and me, they'll be separate. They probably won't meet me there, but they'll certainly meet you there at your office in Springfield, Missouri. What number would you like them to call to arrange this, and is there a deadline?
417-351-5221. Yeah, I've really got get this done not later than mid-June. Mm-hmm. So if I don't finish by mid-June, I can't do it.
When you say finish, does that mean finish the series or the entire?
I have all the subjects I'm going to be able to do. Mm-hmm. I can get it written up in time.
Okay. How long do you expect that the write-up of this will take you?
Well, I've already got it about a half done, so it'll take me another 2 or 3 weeks after I finish.
You mean get the results?
Well, no, the results are immediate.
No, I mean...
I need to submit a written paper to the committee, and it is sponsoring the contest.
And what about those who might be concerned about, might their most inner private thoughts, become public with this? Is it going to be anonymous in terms of your work?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So, class, you don't have to worry about that either. Okay? So, Dr. Shealy, in my case, will you describe in this work some of your findings with respect to me? Or will it be just numbers?
Your name will not be mentioned. You will have a pseudonym.
Uh-huh.
And nothing personal will be released.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there you go, class. If you're interested, you can sign up the way I did. And that telephone number in Springfield, Missouri is 417-351-5221. 417-351-5221. And the purpose of this, Dr. Shealy, can you describe why you're doing this study?
Proof of the survival of human consciousness after death. In other words, if you can give me a story that is convincing of having lived in a previous body and give me details about that, I'm using that as proof of survival of consciousness from one life to another.
Okay, and in my first past life regression with you, which was several years ago, you guided me through it, and it appeared, after we talked about it, it appeared that I was a revolutionary, if you will, just a farmer who was involved with like a war that was coming our way. Think of it like the first Revolutionary War. And 4 villages over, the villages were being sacked and burned down, and people were being executed at the muzzle of a musket. And then they were 3 villages away, then 2 villages away, and I tried to get the local guys, my peers as farmers, together and say, look, we can resist this thing. We can be guerrilla warriors. We can slow this down. We can protect our village. We can protect our wives and daughters from being brutalized and raped and killed. And we can defend our farms. We don't have to let them be burned down. We can resist all this. And I couldn't get anybody to pay attention. No one would follow me. And I was just a farmer. I was no general. I wasn't a president. I wasn't a congressman or a senator or I was just a farmer. And that was my experience. When we come back, Dr. Shealy, can you maybe tell us what you learned from what I thought happened to me in a previous life? We'll be right back with Dr. Shealy. Class, Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, medical doctor. Dr. Shealy, you've done a whole series of past life regression sessions with a lot of people.
Hundreds,
Can you share hundreds? Yeah. Can you share with our class today what you might have learned from my past life regression that you did with me? Was there anything about that that you'd like to share with our class? Uh-huh.
What I figured is that you have not learned yet how to be a politician. You're too honest. That's my interpretation. You've run for office for the co-op, if I remember correctly, 3 times, but you're too honest to win a political job. I believe that for someone to become a politician, they have to be inherently dishonest. I wouldn't trust anybody's total honesty once they declare themselves a politician.
Well, I appreciate those words, Dr. Shealy. And can you describe what you've learned from other people, without mentioning their names, of course, regarding their past lives, that, something that is noteworthy, something that one of the participants in the current one that you are organizing might learn?
Well, most of the time it appears to be a unfinished anger or guilt or depression from a previous life. In other words, you died either tragically or without forgiving the bastards in your life, so to speak. And my most famous one to me is a woman who wouldn't have known the history of this if I told her what it was. She had been shot in the abdomen and had been told when she woke up after original surgery that she accidentally shot herself through the abdomen. But when I did her past life therapy, she gave a perfect history of being Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII or whatever his name was, wife who was guillotined. And she gave the history that it was right out of the textbook of history. And she was totally amnesic for what she had said, but I recorded it. I played it back. She still didn't know what it meant. I said, well, you just told me that you think your husband shot you. He said, well, the last thing I remember, we were having an argument. And so, in her case, if she really was Anne Boleyn, here she was back with another husband desecrating her body.
Have you found any positive, revelations with the past life regression?
Every once in a while, somebody who's terribly depressed and had a depressing life this time goes back to a life that was almost a treasure, if you will, a really positive life, and that allows them to understand that it can be that good.
Dr. Shealy, we have a traditional 1950s, 1960s family. And what I mean by that is we, the boys and Mrs. Finelli and I work together. We work on the farm. We share the duties. Everybody's involved. If cooking needs to be done, somebody does it. It's not like there's a list of, here, you will do these things. It's just every one of us rises to the occasion. If the lawn needs to be done, somebody's going to do it. And it just gets done. And in this 1950s/1960s family, we have dinner together, we have breakfast together, we have lunch together, we have a lot of meals together. And we talk about the events of the day, we talk about global events, we talk about national events, we talk about local events, we talk about, things that have happened that, we think are noteworthy. And one of the boys brought up last week, he said, so-and-so's sister, she's 25 years old, she's obese, and she went to bed, everything was fine, and she woke up blind, couldn't see a thing. They took her to the hospital, and they don't know what's happening. I said, wow, that is terrible. Is there anything we can do, and so forth? And the answer was no, there's nothing we can do now. But Dr. Shealy, have you ever heard of something like that? A 25-year-old?
Well, unfortunately, obesity is the number one cause of premature death in this country. And it can cause death from a stroke. It can cause death from many different things. And so, obviously, in her case, it looks to me as if it had something to do with the blood supply to the eyes or something related in that way. That can happen when you've got diabetes. Diabetes is, a very potentially fatal disease.
And this girl's
adult onset, almost worse sometimes than type 1.
Okay. This young lady, according to what our son said, was, in the 500-pound range. So
anytime you get 40 pounds or more overweight, you're at risk.
Mm-hmm. If this is related to blood supply, is there a chance that vision can come back?
Unlikely.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay, class, Dr. Shealy and I'll be right back. So may we talk about diabetes, type 2 diabetes? I was talking to one of the farmers here, and he's got type 2 diabetes. And I said, well, maybe diet and nutrition can fix that. And I'll ask Dr. Shealy about that on Monday. So may we talk about that? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, medical doctor. Last week I called a telephone number, and I'll give you that number. You can call the same number I called, 417-351-5221, 417-351-5221. That was the number that I dialed to set up my appointment with Dr. Shealy for the past life regression study. So if you'd like to, and you'd like to meet Dr. Shealy in person, which will be a real treat class, I suggest you try that. And I'm pretty darn sure you'll be impressed. And it'll be one of life's most memorable moments. And I'm very serious about that. And I think you will really enjoy this. It's absolutely free. There's no hidden cost, no hidden agenda. And Dr. Shealy delineated exactly how this is going to be. So you'll spend an hour with him, and it'll be just the two of you.
By the way, if it's a woman, yes. I do have another woman sit in with me, but since they are in a light trance, I want them to feel safe. So I have one of the staff women just sit in so they feel protected going into a trance.
That's really kind of you, Dr. Shealy. And when I was teaching young people at the high school level, I made sure that I was never alone with any student. Never alone with a student. For everyone's feeling of comfort. Okay, that's what I did.
Well, I figure a man would always feel safe. They could be held out of me easily. I mean, I don't do anything abnormal, but I want people to feel safe.
Yeah, there you go, class. Type 2 diabetes, Dr. Shealy.
Yes.
I was talking with this farmer friend, and he told me he got a stroke, and it affected his hand and his arm, his right arm and hand. What are your thoughts about it? Can some of this be reversed? And
well, that's
what do we do?
Now, the reversal of that part of it almost certainly would require a gamma PEMF device. But to control the diabetes without drugs, and I do it all the time, of course, at the top of the list is no wheat, no rice, no potato, no sugar. But in addition, to bring the blood sugar under control, there are a number of natural substances. At the top of my list is Gymnema, Gymnema, Sylvestre, Sylvestre, 40 milligrams, which I give them 2 to 3 times a day. And if they still need more help, I give them Fenugreek, Fenugreek, 1,200 milligrams, 2 a day. And if they still need trouble, I give them berberine, 600 milligrams once or twice a day. But those herbs will control the blood sugar infinitely safer and better than any drug in the world. And, by the way, I also always add chromium. The pancreas needs chromium. You can get it either as trichromium or chromium picolinate, or you can take a teaspoon or 2 of cinnamon a day. All of those things help to bring the diabetes under control.
All right. Now, once it's under control, Dr. Shealy, is there a maintenance regimen? Is it the same? Is it different? Or is the problem fixed?
Once it's under control, you may reduce, especially the Gymnema, but it's safe pretty much to take the fenugreek and the berberine forever. But we don't want to lower the blood sugar too much, so you still modify perhaps the daily intake of Gymnema. But the chromium and the other things, yes, you can stay on those forever.
Okay. Dr. Shealy, have you found that when you give this advice and counsel to someone who is a diabetic, who is taking insulin injections, do they jump on and go, wow, what a great idea. All I have to do is change, take the white out of my diet, meaning the wheat, the rice, the potatoes, the sugar, etc. And that's all I have to do, and take some supplements, and I don't have to stick myself with an insulin injection? Or do they say, boy, that's a lot of work. I really like toast. I really like bread.
Well, interesting. Actually, the percentage of people on insulin with type 2 diabetes, adult onset, is pretty low. Even the medical profession doesn't ordinarily, although occasionally I do. But I can get them off insulin or off whatever sugar-controlling drug they're using with these herbs.
What does insulin do, Dr. Shealy? When someone injects insulin, what does it do?
Well, it lowers blood sugar. It is your natural pancreatic-produced way to keep your blood sugar normal. Ordinarily, in a person who doesn't have diabetes, you're still producing insulin in modest amounts, but you don't produce enough to cause trouble. Mm-hmm. If your blood sugar gets down to 70 or below, you can be in trouble with that. You want it somewhere between 80 and 99.
Mm-hmm.
The blood sugar.
When you talk about white bread, we all know what that is. But is that different on your list of what not to eat? Is that different from pumpernickel and rye bread?
Well, today I don't like any bread whatsoever because wheat is loaded with Roundup. Wheat gets a double or triple dose of Roundup, whereas all the other crops on your farm and everywhere else only get it to some extent out of the rain. But wheat is purposefully Roundup up the gazoo. I haven't eaten bread in almost 16 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that means no hamburger rolls, no hot dog rolls.
No,
it means, no soft tacos.
Now, you can get gluten-free. If you've got to have bread, Canyon Bakery makes a very good-tasting whole grain bread, but without wheat.
Have you heard that the president of Mexico just announced that they will not accept in a few years Roundup products imported to?
I did. I congratulate him.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that was my exact reaction. Good for him, but yet the American farmers are furious with him, and the American farmers. And I am an American farmer, class. I think the American farmers have it all backwards. They don't need to be furious with the president of Mexico for banning Roundup.
They need to join him.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If they've got an IQ of 90 or above, they should know better.
Right. And if they want to get mad at someone or angry with someone, the president of Mexico, who is doing the right thing, protecting his people in his country from chemical warfare from Bayer/Monsanto, which was Monsanto at first, with Roundup, glyphosate. They need to focus on who.
I call it.
Yeah. So who was the big cheerleader to protect Monsanto? Well, that'd be Senator Roy Blunt from the corrupt state of Missouri. So if they want to be angry with someone, it should not be directed at the presidency of Mexico. It should be directed at U.S. Congress. That's who it should be directed at. Specifically with a Missouri senator, the guy who protected and accepted campaign donations from Monsanto. Now, there's no way anyone would be able to convince me that a campaign contribution has no link to voting of bills becoming
the
law.
world.
There's no way that I could be convinced that giving a senator $70,000 does not influence how that senator votes. There's no way that there can be no influence based on that money. That's bribery in my book. That's how I see it. And these are my opinions, class. So, I feel terrible for this young lady who woke up blind, but in reality, she could have eaten less, right? I mean,
right.
How does someone get to be 500 pounds, Dr. Shealy? Does it just happen, or does it take, years and years and years of just pizzas?
Well, it usually takes some years, yes. I mean, although people can gain 50 to 100 pounds in a year, but they couldn't gain up to 500 in a year. It's a lifelong thing. Look, I have a sister who was fat from age 2.5 until she died at 58 of complications of diabetes. And nobody could ever tell her, to correct her eating.
Well, Dr. Shealy, knowing you, I can't imagine, getting together for Thanksgiving and Easter and Christmas and et cetera and seeing the family, that you wouldn't say, sis, look.
Well, I did. However, I want you to know she blamed me for her obesity. She was 2.5 years old when I was born. My mother had hyperthyroidism. My mother weighed 75 pounds when I was born. So my mother was preoccupied, frail, taking care of a new baby. And my sister felt neglected and got fat. And she never forgave my sister or me. My mother or me.
You know, I'm thinking about
so I could have told her what to do, but she wouldn't listen to me, of course.
Well, you know, I can understand exactly what you're saying, because the reason I had the expos and the reason I'm on the radio is because to a large extent, I couldn't get my family, I'm not talking about my immediate family, I'm talking about my extended family, to prepare for anything. You know, kind of like, hey, why don't you, you know, if it's on sale, why don't you buy a few extra cans of beans and you just have them, you know, put them in the basement. And, you know, if there's a food problem, you can always have those cans of beans. And the response was, well, if it gets bad, we'll just go out and eat. So I had this expo, you know, to get my family to, they certainly wouldn't listen to me because, you know, I'm related to them, or, you know, through marriage. But maybe they'd listen to other people who say the same thing. And that was my thought. And of course, nobody, not one person in my family came to the expo. Not one. I mean, you know, our boys did, and my wife did. That was it. And my mom, but that was it. I was looking at my son, and he had a short sleeve shirt on. He took a ride in my truck, and he was out there for a couple hours, you know, test driving it and having fun with this, you know, this truck. And his arms are two different colors now. His left arm, well, the air conditioning quit, and I've got to find the leak and recharge it. But his left arm was in the sun, and his right arm was protected by the roof of this little truck. And so he was sunburned for just being in the truck with one arm. And that relates to something I wanted to tell the class about what I have noticed, and I have proven now is happening regarding the sun and the sun's rays. So when we come back, I'll share this with Dr. Shealy and the rest of the class. We'll be right back. That's Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, medical doctor. And Dr. Shealy, I know that you use math a lot in your practice, and you're interested in statistics and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what I mentioned this last week. So you saw our solar array. You've actually been here. You looked at the battery bank and the inverter and the charge controllers and the solar panels and the wiring, etc. You saw all that. Well, yes. We've had this for over 5 years, and it's been humming along just fine. All of a sudden, within the last several weeks, the circuit breakers would trip on the charge controllers. What I'm saying is, it appeared that more current was going into our solar panels than ever before. And the circuit breakers, which were sized appropriately for the charge controllers to protect them, were at 60 amp hour, 60 amps DC current. And that's the charge controls. We had two of them. One of them is 60 amps and the other is 60 amps. And they're both protected by circuit breakers. And the circuit breakers were tripping. And they were tripping in weather that, was, I would say, overcast. I thought, what in the heck is going on? This has never happened before. Is it a bad breaker? So I swapped the breakers and they kept tripping. So I bought two new breakers. I had a spare charge controller, and I decided to separate, divide up the solar panels that we had, take some of them off one of the charge controllers and put them on a new charge controller that we added. So now all three charge controllers are the same, but now the solar array can handle 60 plus 60 plus 60 amps, or 180 amps, which is a lot. Well, I just checked, and this relates to my son having one of his arms burned by the sun in just a couple hours. Well, I checked the solar output. Now, I'll tell you what these numbers are, class. These are accurate numbers from today. So at 9 o'clock this morning, just as the broadcast was beginning, our solar system was generating 3,000 watts of electricity. 3,000 watts is a lot. If you have a solar system, 3,000 watts is a lot. That was at 9 o'clock in the morning when the sun hasn't even hit the solar panels very well yet. At 10 o'clock, it was 5,000 watts. Never happened before. It never happened at 9 o'clock, 3,000 watts. At 10 o'clock, never had 5,000 watts. And just a couple minutes ago, about 6 minutes ago, I ran out and checked the solar system, and it's generating 5,500 watts. Never has it done that. Now, the breakers haven't tripped because I spread the load out over 3 sets of breakers rather than 2 sets of breakers and 3 charge controllers. What I'm saying, Dr. Shealy, is since we have stopped spraying the skies with the chemtrails, and since air pollution is down from fewer flights and fewer people driving and fewer destruction of the planet, especially in the United States, with energy consumption, the sun is stronger. Have you had any experiences like this?
Well, that's interesting. I have not, and I don't have solar panels, and I don't have any way of measuring the output that you're talking about. But on the weekend, for instance, I could spend up to 2 hours out in the sun with no shirt on, and I haven't gotten burned. But I don't sunburn. You'd have to. I maybe in the tropics I would sunburn, but here I can stay out all day and I won't sunburn.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm saying, based on my experience, looking at just a little bit of evidence with our son getting sunburned in 2 hours, and the solar meters telling me that we're generating record amount of electricity. I'm thinking that this is 25 to 33% or so more than ever before. The system hasn't changed. The batteries haven't changed. The only thing that's changed is the occlusion of the solar arrays has become reduced, in my opinion. And I'm anxious to see what happens, at high noon when these solar panels are really running full tilt. I'm interested in seeing that because, frankly, we were of the belief that we had to put in more panels because we just weren't able to generate as much electricity as the system should have been able to generate. Now it's running, I believe now it's running at its specifications, which is it's now running the way it's supposed to. And we haven't changed anything other than allow more circuit breakers and more charge controlling to process that extra current. But anyway, I wanted to share that with you because I think the sun's rays are stronger because man's pollution is less. We'll be right back. So I just went out during the break, and we're now generating over 5,700 watts, absolute record here. So I think there is something to this, class. And so, maybe on Friday, hour number 1, if I'm alone and you want to call in and tell me what your thoughts are, that would be great to know, okay? Dr. Shealy, is there a natural remedy for coughing?
For coughing?
Yes.
I don't know one. I'm sure there may be, but it's not something I've ever actually tried to find, I guess, because I've never had it. And I don't have a patient who comes in with that primary complaint most of the time. Okay.
I was just wondering if there's some natural herb that can be used to reduce coughing. Clearing the throat, making phlegm come up a little bit easier, that kind of thing.
I have a feeling, suddenly something came into my mind. I'm going to look it up quickly. Turpentine.
Mm. Okay. Now, are you talking about the stuff that you use in furniture refinishing?
Yeah. Turpentine. Okay. But there's uses. Turpentine uses. The difference. Odorless turpentine, strong odor, medical turpentine, treatment for various kinds of health conditions. It can be needed rubbed on the chest. I knew that. And taken internally. I have a sneaking suspicion that it can help cough. But I've got uses, dosage, contraindications, history, chemistry, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, and a parasitic.
That's the kind of it's the kind of thing that a person wouldn't even think of.
Yeah. Well, I didn't find it here, but I have a sneaking suspicion that a drop or two of turpentine might help, but I don't know that for sure yet.
Okay. And so you're talking about a medical grade of turpentine rather than...
Oh, yeah.
Going out to the garage. Okay. So class, don't just, use that old turpentine that you've got, in the basement or in the garage or someplace. Make sure that you do your own research and make sure you're comfortable with this before you do anything like this. I was wondering, Dr. Shealy, let's see. I wanted to mention this. I was thinking about, over the weekend, I was thinking about our founding fathers. And, they were brilliant. They were brilliant with the use of words. And to write them down, they used a quill, feather shaped with an inkwell. And then eventually there was a progression with technology. We had a pencil, which required sharpening, so you could write for a while and you have to sharpen it. And then we had a fountain pen with an ink reservoir, which would, let you write a little bit faster. Then we had ballpoint pens, and then a computer, and now we have texting. So we went from eloquent writing when we took our time using the quill, because you'd have to stop, reload it with ink, dip it in the inkwell. And so we wrote more slowly and more deliberately, and we didn't have erasers back when the quill was used. So you had to get it right the first time. So you had to think about what you were saying. And I was thinking how technology has progressed. And so we went from, that roughly to the pencil, and then heck, you could have an eraser and you could make a mistake and undo that mistake. And then we went to fountain pens, you just cross off what your mistake. And, then the ballpoint pen, and now a computer, and we just hit the backspace. And now we have texting, and we don't even use whole words. And I'm wondering if we have lost the ability to think clearly and write cogently, as did our founding fathers, who took the time to get it right the first time.
I think you are correct. We could talk about it all day, but I have a sneaking suspicion that you're startlingly correct.
Dr. Shealy, I asked you over the years, 10 years that we've been together broadcasting 2 hours a week, how you write. And you just write in longhand, don't you? You write your books longhand.
Well, actually, I used to. I actually have gotten to the stage I now type them.
Okay.
On a computer. Okay. But I do write. I still type them. Okay.
When you wrote them longhand, did you yourself type them, or did someone read your...
Then I had a secretary who typed them for me.
Okay.
Since Jody, my longtime secretary, is now retired, the last several years I've learned to type them myself.
Okay. Well, I went to an all-boys school, and back then, typing, that was something that girls did. Okay? And, guys didn't do that. Whether it's sexist or not, that's the way it was. And so I never really learned to type. I used, a couple of fingers,
Well, I never learned until, more recently, yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm wondering if these articles that I read, on the internet, I wonder if they are so poorly written because the people who wrote them don't really think it through. It's that get it done fast rather than get it done well. And I'm thinking, as my son came back from driving that truck, and it's a stick shift, and this is something that truck drivers deal with all the time. I'm talking about the big rigs. If they're going uphill, they've got an inertia drive, so they got to go downhill a little faster till they get to the point where they're going back up the hill, and so they use the inertia, the kinetic energy, to help them, so they just don't end up crawling up the hill. Well, people in cars with automatic transmissions don't seem to understand what a truck driver goes through. And that's the same thing that our son was going through, some of these hills in Branson, long, long hills. And, people would pull in front of him and they'd go really slowly and then they'd hit the gas pedal and take off. Well, with the manual transmission, he'd have to downshift and downshift. And, it's annoying because we are surrounded by idiots who don't understand, how to do things. Excuse me?
I said you're being kind.
Well, it's crazy. It's crazy how we have devolved. And, this writing with a quill versus writing, with a ballpoint pen versus writing on a computer. We don't even teach how to write in cursive anymore in schools. Heck, we don't need no stinking cursive because we've got a keyboard and a mouse. As a matter of fact, you don't even need hardly a keyboard because there are programs you can just talk into a microphone and dictate, and the computer will figure out what in the heck you're trying to say. But I think that all in all, the process of thinking clearly, getting our thoughts clearly down on paper has eroded to the point where people can't even write articles for the media anymore very well. At least that's my thought. Sometimes when I read these articles, I can't figure out which he they're talking about. They're talking about three guys, and they say he, and I don't know which one they're talking about. Now, they probably do, but I don't. And that's the degrading of some of the skills. Dr. Shealy, I was wondering if I did the right thing. During one of the breaks, I ran into the kitchen, and I opened the refrigerator, and I was going to get some milk to put in my coffee. But there was a jar of jelly in there. And I was thinking, sugar and jelly. Now, did I do the right thing by not having jelly, as a quick snack on maybe?
Yes.
So jelly equals
fine. Mm-hmm. A tablespoon of old-fashioned peanut butter would be fine, but jelly, unfortunately, is loaded with sugar.
Right. Okay. So I just want to make sure that I did the right thing, and I wanted to share that thought with our class. So here's something that a lot of people are starting to talk about, or more people are starting to talk about. The Pentagon has admitted, there's some sightings that have been seen, and we don't know what they are, and we'll call them unidentified flying objects, so UFOs. But the government's been teaching us with Project Blue Book that we're all imagining these things. Dr. Shealy, what are your thoughts about extraterrestrial life? Do you have an opinion?
About what? I missed the word.
Extraterrestrial life. Do you have a feeling, an opinion on
according to Zachariah Sitchin, they've been coming around here for at least 300,000 years. And I'm a great fan of Zachariah Sitchin, the 12th planet. He's written 9 or 12 different books on the Anunnaki. And there's no question about it. They built the Great Pyramids, among other things. They taught us civilization. And they're supposed to come back in 2074. They come back every 3,600 years.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? 3,600, not 3,200, and there are 360 degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's 360 degrees in a circle. So there must be something.
Their 1 year compared to ours is 3,600 years instead of 360 days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that there is life outside of our planet. I absolutely believe that. I think, as one of my instructors said, Carl Sagan, he said that we'd be pretty arrogant to think that we were the biggest and the best and the highest form of life in the entire universe. What makes us think that? And then there are people who think that, okay, if we're visited by an extraterrestrial, we got to shoot them and blow them up. Get those nuclear weapons out and show them who's boss. Well, that's insanity as far as I'm concerned, because if they can get here and we can't get there, who do we think we are? And
I agree.
And to make matters worse, the military's like, we'll take care of that. We got a few rockets, and we got an arsenal of these nuclear weapons, and we can take care of them. Well, if they can get here and we can't get there, they can vaporize us. So we'd be pretty stupid to not be friendly with them and say, hey, come on, let's give you the tour. We'll show you how.
Sodom and Gomorrah was apparently an atomic bomb by them. According to Titkin, that area is still radioactive.
Wow. Fascinating. Well, I was just wondering what your thoughts were. And what are your thoughts about heaven, Dr. Shealy? Do you have an opinion on heaven? The way it's taught in most Christian religions?
I believe that there is some power that we call God. I think that when we become good enough, we may stay between lives. We somehow, I know they're angels. I have communication with them. I don't know that I think of a time where we just spend time in paradise, but I basically I believe in the Christ consciousness, and above all, I think God does not interfere in the life of most individuals, if hardly ever, but it's possible. That's the way I look at it. That's a brief summary.
Yeah. Dr. Shealy, medical doctor, and I will be right back for the last segment right after these few commercial announcements. Dr. Ron Shealy is with us, medical doctor. Class, if you'd like to participate in that past life regression, I'll give you the number again. 417-351-5221, 417-351-5221, and call during normal business hours in the Central Time Zone. That's Dr. Shealy's office number in Springfield, New Jersey, 417-351-5221. Dr. Shealy, I'm kind of convinced that the country of Chile does not put fluoride in the water, and I'll tell you why. I was reading an article about this guy, and I saw the images of it on the internet. So, and I'm not exaggerating, class. This is for real. This guy was filling up his car, putting fuel in his car. Now, I'm not sure if it was diesel fuel or gasoline, but he was at the pump, and he has the nozzle, has a nozzle in the fuel tank. He's pumping gas, and all of a sudden, this van pulls up really close to him. I mean, uncomfortably close. Nobody would do this, okay, under normal circumstances. So he looks up, and he sees this van, and he sees a guy jump out of the van. And it looks like he is going to be robbed right then and there while he's putting fuel in the tank. And then another guy jumps out, and a third guy jumps out of the van. So now this guy has 3 attackers, and he's putting fuel in the tank. So what does he do? Now, this is why I think that they don't have fluoride in the water in Chile.
I know what I would do. I'd squirt it with gas.
That's exactly what he did. and
then throw a match at
So I don't know if he threatened him with a Ronson lighter or what, but I think it's brilliant. And so, class, I can't advocate that, but I have a feeling that I would have done the same thing. I wouldn't worry about, the 2 gallons of gasoline that I was spraying on them. But these guys were terrified because one match and they would have been, toasty. And by the way, Dr. Shealy, they used to call the guys, our GIs in World War II, used to call the Sherman tank. They used to call them Ronsons, R-O-N-S-O-N. And the reason they called them Ronsons is because they caught fire a lot. So if they were hit by a German tank round, they would just incinerate and burn up everybody inside the Sherman tank. The Sherman tank was the American tank. It was a cheesy tank. And it was gasoline powered. But they called them Ronsons because there was a lighter that a lot of GIs would buy, and they were made by a company called Ronson. And Ronson's claim was it would light the first time. So they called the tanks Ronsons. And so these guys in this van that attempt to rob this motorist, I think maybe they were thinking about Ronson lighters while they were drenched in gasoline or diesel fuel. And I have a feeling it was gasoline. So good on that guy. And I wanted to share that. So this guy was bright and quick, and he went right to defense. Brilliant defense strategy. And that's why I think they don't have fluoride in the water in Chile, because if they did, it'd be like, typical Americans. Uh-oh, what do I do? Great choice of tactics. CBD oil, Dr. Shealy, what are your thoughts?
Well, theoretically it's safe, but 99% of them also have THC in them. So if you are at risk of, being checked for marijuana, you could test positive after you've taken regular CBD oil. If you're going to use it, I would insist upon 100% THC free.
Okay. What are your thoughts about deer antler velvet? Do you have you done research or?
I've done no research on it. I'm well aware that I think it's been used as an aphrodisiac, but I don't even know enough, and I'm not chopping it down myself.
Okay. I was just wondering if, through your medical adventures that you either read about it, researched it, recommended it, found others that have used it, and consulted with other doctors and found what they thought. Okay. Have you noticed that the American food supply? I remember back in the 1950s and 60s reading that the American food supply is the safest and best in the world. Lately, since the Corona panic.
That is great.
Right. And that's where
propaganda up the kazoo. Our entire food supply is poisoned by Roundup from 75% of all rain in the country having Roundup in it. In my opinion, it is unethical and illegal to call something organic if it was grown outside.
Well, Dr. Shealy, very quickly, I want to tell you that over the years, I've noticed that, the rain, we had a deluge of rain, we'd see bubbles in the creeks, and I'm thinking, where did this come from? So I got it, I drove all around, it's all over the area. Well, I saw bubbles coming out of our downspouts. So it's not like we're putting detergent on our roof. It was coming from overhead. It really was. So I just wanted to share that with you, Dr. Shealy. And this thing about Roundup in the rain, absolutely. There's no question that it's not in the food and in the rain. Thank you so much, Dr. Shealy.